evolution of e-gaming. Video games have become the biggest worldwide medium of entertainment today, and one thing that helped make video games so popular is their competitive nature. And with competitive gaming comes esports, gaming on a professional level. Welcome to Shark Teq. We provide you with the latest updates and news and all that's happening in the tech world straight from the horse's mouth. Let's dive right in. What is e-gaming? Also known as esports, short for electronic sports, is a form of competition using video games. Esports often take the form of organized multiplayer video game competitions, particularly between professional players, individually, or as teams. Playing video games was once just a hobby chiefly popular among teenage boys. Today, it's an industry expected to surpass $1.5 billion by 2023, according to Business Insider. According to Forbes, esports is fast on its way to becoming the most financially lucrative market on the planet, thanks to huge exposure and interest in major tournaments. The early years of e-gaming. The early days of competitive computer games date back to 1952. At that time, computer scientist Alexander Shafto Douglas was working on his doctoral thesis on the interaction between humans and computers in Cambridge, and came up with the idea of implementing the game XOX as a computer game. However, the human always played against the computer and could only determine who started. The first actual multiplayer game was presented in 1958 by the then head of instrumentation Higginbotham at the Open Day. It was called Tennis for Two and allowed two people to play against each other. It was played with an early form of the joystick, which allowed players to hit the ball over the net and adjust its trajectory. Today, this title is considered by many to be the birth of esports. The 60s, beginning of esports. It would be a few more years before the first esports-like tournament would exist. The space game Space War had already been written in 1962 on a PDP-10 computer by computer scientist Steve Russell and some colleagues, like Martin Graetz and Wayne Wittinen, of the Tech Model Railroad Club at MIT. In it, two players play against each other with one spaceship each. Interestingly, the spaceships already had a limited supply of fuel and ammunition and had to fight against the gravitational field of the planet. It is considered the world's first digital computer game and was named one of the 10 most important computer games of all time by the New York Times in 2007. But on October 19, 1972, the time had finally come. The Artificial Intelligence Laboratory at Stanford University hosted the world's first esports tournament, the Intergalactic Space War Olympics. 24 players met on this day to compete in Space War. Incidentally, the winner at the time received a year subscription to Rolling Stones magazine. The circle of people playing the early games was still limited to universities and similar institutions since they had the technical facilities. The 70s. Arcades and home consoles. With the introduction of the Magnavox Odyssey in 1972, the first game console appeared that could be connected to a TV. Even though it was rather awkward to use, the playing field had to be glued to the TV in the form of a template in order to play. This console made digital gaming suitable for the masses. In addition, arcades were subsequently established, which made it possible for the general public to play games on machines such as Pong. However, the competitive nature of the game only became possible with the introduction of permanent high-score lists. One of the first machines to feature this option was Seawolf from 1976. The 80s, beginning of high-score lists. In 1979, two machines appeared, Asteroids and Starfire, which for the first time enabled gamers to immortalize themselves in a high-score list with a personal name code. Since only a few machines offered the possibility to play against each other, these lists became a measure of the player's skill. With Space Invaders, Atari laid the foundation for the world's first major esports tournament in 1978. The early gaming classic was played at the 1980 Space Invaders Championships by over 10,000 gamers competing to win a version of Asteroids. On October 10, 1980, William Salvador Heinemann was crowned the winner of the challenge. He was thus the first winner of a national video game competition. Netrek, a classic video game. In 1988, Netrek was released, the first multiplayer computer game that up to 16 players could play against each other over the internet. It was a real-time strategy game in the Star Trek universe. The 90s, better technology for e-gaming. At the beginning of the 1990s, Nintendo had also recognized the phenomenon of competition and organized the Nintendo World Championships in the USA in 1990. The winners of the competition, which was held in 3 age categories, received golden Nintendo gaming modules. The games were a triple header of Super Mario Bros., Rad Racer, and Tetris. The video store chain Blockbuster Video, well known in the USA, organized a world championship for video gamers in 1994 in cooperation with the American Game Pro magazine. The tournament was held on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Mega Drive. Games played included Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Virtual Racing. Turning point history of e-gaming. In the 1990s, it became clear that the future of competitive gaming would be found on PCs and in the network. As hardware became cheaper and more powerful, PCs became interesting for private households and thus also for the games industry. In the mid-1990s, the first large LAN parties started, where gamers could compete with each other, but not only on a large scale, but especially on a small scale. Gaming via the network exerted ever-increasing fascination. More and more gamers met at small network sessions and played their favorite games. Modern age of e-gaming. In 2002, MLG, Major League Gaming, began to host heavily marketed tournaments for the range of game genres. And in 2006, they became the first ever televised video game league. Just like with conventional sports, rivalries were formed, storylines were created, and teams grew their supporter base. Similar growth was also happening in Asia with a strategy game, StarCraft, published in 1998, becoming a competitive scene in its own right. Just like in the US, professional teams and players began to materialize, and with their corporate sponsorships, promotional partnerships, and the concept of full-time competitive gamers becoming normalized. Streaming. The rise of streaming accelerated the growth of esports, resulting in more choice and easier access for fans and viewers. It also gave content creators and professional gamers their own channels within wider platforms, meaning that they could create content directly for their fans without having to depend on media partners and television producers. Twitch comes out top. While MLG was the first to create esports leagues, it was Twitch's introduction in 2011 that led the niche to go from a passion to a vocation for the best players. By managing and streaming their own gameplay in tournaments, players could build entire careers around streaming gameplay and make a name for themselves on the scene. As a byproduct of such exposure, game studios quickly discovered the need to keep pace with the demands of both the players and their viewers by keeping fresh content in the pipeline, with continuous improvements to graphics and gameplay loops. Recent major tournaments. Even though electronic sports events as we know them have only been operating for a few decades, their prize pools are already comparable to those of conventional sports. For instance, the League of Legends World Championship in 2011 had a prize pool of $2 million, which was the largest in history at the time. Then, only 8 years later, the Fortnite World Cup broke records for both total and individual prize pool, with a total prize pool of $30 million. To put this into perspective, one player known as Booga took home over $3 million in prize money, compared to the $2.3 million taken home by Wimbledon in 2021 winner Novak Djokovic. For the 10th year in a row, Valve's annual Dota 2 Global Championship has shattered the record for esports prize pools, with the tournament offered a total prize pool of $1.6 million in 2011 and 2012. It has been the most successful example of crowd-funded prize pools in esports history since 2013. In conclusion, in almost 70 years of computer gaming history, the popularity of esports has increased several dozen times in many countries around the world. As a result, prize money has grown significantly, events are growing every year, and even esports betting are offered. Many may not know how did esports start, but from a small niche. It has become a multimedia billion-dollar market that is now attracting many investors. Let us know in the comments below if you found this video helpful. Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel to get the latest updates. Thanks for watching, and see you soon in the next video.